Lillian Salami, who is ably representing the Honorable Minister for Education. I can see that our guest lecturer is already logged in. Professor Chief Jane Boga, who is native of Okbila, and several other distinguished Nigerians home and abroad. I want to also welcome in a special manner the Chancellor of our university, Dr. Remy Makojonla, who is already logged in and waiting anxiously to have this event kick off. Ladies and gentlemen, without wasting much time, I'd like to invite us to participate in the opening formalities by rising to sing the national anthem, and thereafter we will do the university anthem. It's my privilege, therefore, to ask that we sing the Nigerian national anthem. May we rise. Thank you very much. We may now resume our seats. The Vice Chancellor, University, Engineer Emmanuel Aluyo, Principal Officers of the University here present, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, would like to make you welcome once more to this academic activity in the academic life of Edo University. We will take recognitions in the course of this event. However, I would like to move very quickly to the Vice Chancellor to welcome us to this university and to the event, and thereafter we will proceed with the rest of the activities. Mr. Vice Chancellor, sir.
His Excellency, Mr. Godwin Nogagase Obaseki, the Executive Governor of Edo State and visitor to Edo University, Iyamho. His Excellency, Right Honorable Philip Shaibu, the Deputy Governor of Edo State. Malam Adamu, the Honorable Minister of Education, ably represented by Professor Lilian Salami, the Vice Chancellor of the University of Benin. Honorable Jimo Ejegbai, the Honorable Commissioner for Education, Edo State, members of the Edo State Executive Council, members of the Edo State House of Assembly, Dr. Aderemi M. Makanjola, Chancellor, Edo University, Iyamho, Professor Adam Zahler, Worcester State University, USA, who will be delivering our convocation lecture today. The special guest of honor, Professor Yakubu Ochefu, Secretary General, Association of Vice Chancellors of Nigerian Universities, visiting Vice Chancellors, stroke rectors of sister tertiary institutions, principal officers of the university, members of Senate of the university, Your Royal Highnesses, gentlemen of the press, staff and students of Edo University, Iyamho, distinguished invitees, ladies and gentlemen. It is with great delight that I welcome you all to the second convocation lecture of Edo University, Iyamho. I especially welcome the governor and visitor to the university, His Excellency, Mr. Godwin Nogagase Obaseki. I also welcome the chairman for this occasion, the convocation lecture, the Honorable Minister for Education, Malam Adamu, ably represented by Professor Mrs. Lilian Salami, Vice Chancellor of University of Benin, for agreeing to chair the second convocation lecture of our university. Let me salute the special guest of honor, a man of many parts, a two-time Vice Chancellor and Secretary General of the Committee of Vice Chancellors of Nigerian Universities, Professor Yakubu Ochefu. I want to specially welcome our lecturer for this second convocation lecture, Professor Adam Zahler of Worcester State University, Worcester, Massachusetts, USA, via Zoom. The title of the impact of COVID-19 on tertiary education, a view from the West and possible implications for African universities. I want to assure the audience that by the end of the lecture, we will all be enlightened on the impact of COVID-19 on tertiary institutions. Distinguished guests, Honorable Minister for Education, sir, please permit me to seize this opportunity to thank you for commissioning our Canvas Learning Management System on the 27th of January, 2019. That was last year, early last year. The Canvas Learning Management System is a digital platform that enables teaching, learning, and interaction between lecturers and students online on one hand, and also the opportunity for parents to guardians to be integrated into the learning process by monitoring the academic activities of the awards online on the other hand. The utility of the LMS platform was well captured by Honorable Chukwuemeka Nwajuba, Minister of State for Education, while commending Edo University for the deployment of the Canvas Learning Management System. And he stated thus, glad to know that lecturers have been using the Canvas LMS from their various homes while the students are receiving lectures from their homes via Canvas video conferencing facility, access comprehensive and illustrative diagrams, video links, video and audio materials. I'm therefore indeed glad to report that Edo University Iyamho was able to conclude the 2019-2020 academic session using the Canvas Learning Management System. The result of this achievement is why we are able to gather here today to celebrate our graduates with this second convocation lecture of Edo University Iyamho. I'm also glad to announce that the second convocation ceremonies will come to an end tomorrow with the award of degrees to deserving graduates. The activities for the convocation started off with a Juma service on Friday, 30th October 2020. The activity was followed by a Thanksgiving service on Sunday, November 1st, 2020, a media briefing on the achievement of the university on Monday, 2nd November 2020. On the 4th of November 2020, the rescheduled 4th Founders Day lecture held with the Chief of the Air Staff as guest lecturer. The Executive Secretary of TED Fund was chairman of that occasion, and the Director General of the NYC was a special guest of honor. Today's event is also indispensable, not just because it is an activity ceremony for the award of degrees, but also because of the title convocation lecture, the convocation lecturer, and indeed the invited guests for the lecture. Congratulations to our graduates for being found worthy in character and in learning to be awarded in various disciplines. I want to thank the honor and visitor to the university, His Excellency, Mr. Godwin Nogegase Obaseki, for his support to the university. Finally, I thank all our parents and distinguished guests for honoring our invitation to attend the second convocation lecture via Zoom. Thank you all for your time, and God bless you all.
Thank you very much, Mr. Vice Chancellor. That was the welcome address by the Vice Chancellor, Engineer Professor Aluyo. At this point, we would like to go quickly into the main course for this afternoon's meal, which is the convocation lecture proper. And just before we bring on Professor Adam Zahler, we will do a quick citation on the guest lecturer so that those who do not know him can begin to glean what kind of man he is and the reservoir of knowledge that he brings to bear in giving this year's convocation. He's a professor. Would like to apologize very quickly. We will take Professor Zahler's citation as soon as we do point. We'd like to go on to the Minister of Education, Malam Adamu, who is very ably represented at this event by the awarding very full of the University of Benin, Professor Lilian Salami, who is wearing the shoes that are big, but that she can comfortably manage. Madam Minister, may I invite you at this point to please give your opening remarks to this august gathering.
Thank you very much for having me. Your Excellency, And please permit me to rest on the protocol already established by our Vice Chancellor, Professor.
Representative.
Hello? If they're not. Hello, can you hear me?
We can hear you now. We can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay. Your Excellency, and please permit me to rest on the protocol already established by the Vice Chancellor, Professor Aluyo. I must first of all state here that I am wearing 3 caps. I am representing the Executive Secretary of the Nigerian Universities Commission, NUC, and then of course, the Honorable Minister of Education, and my home, so you can quite with me that I'm one today. Indeed, a great honor and privilege to be part of this second convocation ceremony, representing the chairman of the Honorable Minister of Education, Adamu Adamu. He sends his very warm felicitation and wished he could be with you, but for urgent demands of his job. Before the minister's address, let me send the Executive Secretary's greetings. He would have loved to be here, but for his crucial role as one of the mediators between the federal government and ASU. And you know that is a serious business. That is why he cannot be here with us. I will now proceed to read the Honorable Minister's address. It is always very exciting to be invited to witness convocation ceremonies, which is a very crucial aspect, indicating the secular yearly completion of higher learning. To the graduates, it is the pinnacle of all the years of hard work during the course of studies in the university. It is also particularly rewarding to see the sense of accomplishment on the faces of the lecturers, students, and graduates. I therefore congratulate all the graduates for the successful completion of their studies and attaining the required qualification fields of professional trainings. Also to the lecturers and parents, you have all done well for your sacrifices. Let me reiterate that the Federal Ministry of Education, under my leadership, is committed to evolving ways of improving on the state of our education system, especially tertiary education, because we strongly believe that such will lead to the production of competent, marketable, qualified, and well needed for development for Nigeria. There is no doubt that Nigeria has continued to grapple with challenges that the ivory towers, which ought to serve as solution centers, providing creative, innovative knowledge and leadership, have themselves also been greatly affected. I strongly believe that our dedication and collective commitment will take us to see all through this. As part of these challenges, humanity suddenly experienced the emergence of corona pandemic, tagged COVID-19, in the wake of late 2019. It has not only destabilized the economic life of our dear nation, but the education system, leading among others to the closure of schools and all related academic activities, truncating of academic calendar, affecting public funding on education, and created difficulties in teaching and learning processes. A new normal became eminent, where alternative means of teaching and learning on WebEx and other platforms were introduced. I must commend Edo University Iyamho for blazing the trail in the use of modern enhanced technology in teaching and learning. The university, through its Canvas Learning LMS, able to conclude 2019-2020 academic session seamlessly. The choice of the second convocation lecture, The Impact of COVID-19 on Tertiary Education, a view from the West and possible implication for African universities, is very apt and may bring some insights into finding and developing local content solutions to the COVID-19 pandemic. No doubt, the new normal in this era of COVID-19, of the sector over the world. Enhanced technology for teaching and learning has implications on Nigerian universities of the challenges they face, which are likely to impair the full utilization of digital equipment as well as development of skills. Let me formally welcome and gracefully acknowledge the lecturer, Professor Adam Zahler of Worcester State University, USA. Once again, I congratulate and wish you, the graduates, the best on your milestone achievement in spite of the COVID-19 pandemic, and urge you to be good ambassadors of your great institution, Edo University. While you strive to build successful careers for your personal growth and development, improve on your family's fortune, and contribute to the great general manpower development of our great country, Nigeria. I once again congratulate the Vice Chancellor and his management team for making Nigeria proud for a well-done job. To our August audience, please relax. Thank you very much. God bless you.
We want to thank Professor Lillian Salami, who has effectively and ably represented the Honorable Minister of Education, the Executive Secretary of the NUC, the University of Benin, and indeed herself. So she's not wearing 3 caps, as she said, but 4. The ministers, the executive secretaries, the University of Benin, and indeed herself, Vice Chancellor, University of Benin. We thank you for that brilliant speech, and I think that has set the tone for the conversation that we're about to have. Just before the conversation begins, let me do a quick citation on Professor Adam Zahler. Adam Zahler is a professor of theater at Worcester State University, Worcester, Massachusetts, where he's acting and directing. He's in his 9th Department of Visual and Performing Arts. He's a co-founder and the creative director of City Speak, a group and a project that interrogates the society on different developmental issues. Professor Zahler sits on the All-University Committee as chair twice. He has also served as strategic planning and the student group and the for Unity Advisory Committee among in the city of Worcester, executive board of the Public Arts Group Center, American College Theater Festivals, Region 1. He has served as chair of the directing committee, member of the selection committee, and co-chair of the invited Saint Showcase. In his professional theater life, Professor Zahler served as a founding artistic director of 2 theater companies in Vermont, one of the states in New England, second stage, and the open stage, as well as interim co-artistic director of Vermont Repertory Theater in the Boston area. In the Boston area, he served also as producing associate at the New Repertory Theater. As a stage director in the Great Boston area, he has been honored with the Elliott Norton Awards for Outstanding Productions, Stonewall Jackson's House, 2001, and Outstanding Director, Permanent Collection, 2005. And he has since been nominated twice for the Best Director Award by the Independent Reviewers of New England. He's most proud of the actors and designers whom have been honored with awards while working on this production. In Massachusetts, he has directed for New Repertory Theater, the Underground Railway Theater, the Nora Theater, Lyric Stage Company of Boston, Speak Easy Stage Company, Lyric Stage West, the Titanic Theater, and others, and as well as productions in New York, New Jersey, Vermont, Virginia, etc. Internationally, his production of the Patriot Act was a sellout at the Edinburgh Fringe, and it earned a nomination for the Best Actor at the festival in 1993 as part of a cultural exchange program. He presented the first American production at Volkov Theater in Yaroslav, Russia's oldest national theater company. As an actor, he has appeared in commercials, voiceovers, small films, and on stage. He was seen most recently at the Huntington Theater Company in Come Back Little Sheba, directed by David Cromer, which received an Elliott Norton for Outstanding Ensemble. Professor Zahler holds an MFA in drama from the University of Virginia and a BA in psychology from the University of Vermont. He's a member of stage directors and choreographers, the Professional Stage Directors Union. Professor Zahler is a very happy man who seeks to interrogate society from time to time. And this perhaps has influenced what he's going to be talking to us about today. He's very happily married to Amy, and they have Michael and Naomi as their daughters. Ladies and gentlemen, it's my privilege and rare honor at this point to invite to take the floor Professor Adam Zahler, Chair of the Department of Visual and Performing Arts, Worcester State University, Worcester, Massachusetts. Please welcome him to the microphone. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Okaku. I'm very pleased to be here. Good afternoon, good morning in my case. His Excellency, Governor Godwin Obaseki, Chancellor Dr. Adarmi Makanjula, Minister of Education, Malam Adamu, so ably represented by Vice Chancellor of the University of Benin, Professor Lillian Salami, and Vice Chancellor Professor Emmanuel Alulio. Thank you for the honor of inviting me to speak at this, the second convocation of Edo University Iyamho. Deans, members of the staff, families, friends, and most important, graduating class of 2020, congratulations on this auspicious day. I often think about what it was like when I arrived in Lagos 5 years ago for a visit to Benin City. I didn't understand a lot of what I saw because it was so different from what I was used to. Within 24 hours, I was in a state of confusion. To give you an example, when I was in queue to board my Arik Air flight to Benin City, a man said to me, "Check your bags." I said, "I already checked my bags." He said, "Check your bags." And I said, "I checked my bags inside." He said, "Check your bags," and pointed out a pile of luggage waiting to be loaded on the plane. I walked over, made sure my bags were there, and walked back muttering, "I don't understand anything." I sat on the plane thinking about my confusion. It was a frame of reference problem, right? To me, anyone who flies in the US, check your bags has one specific meaning, giving them to the airline to load on the plane. Hearing the same words used to mean something else, look to make sure your luggage is there, didn't make any sense in the moment. I only had one frame of reference and I needed to learn another. So I created a little mantra: expect nothing, anticipate nothing. I repeated it often to myself in that first week: expect nothing, anticipate nothing. That mantra helped me greatly as I learned a little bit about your country and your culture. It helped me to see with new eyes and hear with new ears. It helped me to put aside my preconceptions and experience Edo State for its own, or at least begin to. When I was asked to speak here to you about the impact of COVID-19 on tertiary education, a view from the West, and possible implications for African universities, I thought, what can I have to say about this? I'm a professor of theater and a theater professional. My scholarship, so necessary for my position as a professor, is an arts practice, not an arts scholarship. Sorry, I'm speaking academese. I just used a sentence filled with American academic language. My scholarship, so necessary for my position as a professor, is in arts practice, not an arts scholarship. Allow me to translate. When I say my scholarship, I mean the work I do that contributes to my chosen field. For most professors, that means conducting research and publishing papers and books. When I say arts practice, not an arts scholarship, I mean that I create art, I don't write about it for publication. When I say necessary, I mean so that I can get paid. See, with the right frame of reference, you can understand what I mean is I direct and act professionally as part of my contractually required academic duties in order to earn my salary. And you don't even need a dictionary. Well, back to my topic, the impact of COVID-19 on tertiary education, a view from the West, and possible implications for African universities. I was asking, what can I have to say about this? Let me be honest, of course I have things to say. I'm a stage director, I'm trained to have opinions. But I do not live and work in Africa. I live and work in the United States of America. Now, whatever your preconceptions of the United States of America were before, whatever your thoughts when you heard those 4 words, United States of America, 5 years ago, your thoughts are certainly different now in the COVID era. How does someone whose country has so botched the response to the greatest health crisis in the last 100 years have any standing to say anything about it to the rest of the world? As I was writing this, the COVID infection rate in Nigeria was about 0.03%. In the United States of America, it was about 2.5%. Our rate of death is the highest in the world. Our economy is in tatters. Unemployment has reached historic highs. Businesses are closing, and 8 million people have fallen into poverty since March. We are confronting chronic issues of systemic racism that has had thousands of people marching in the streets in spite of the dangers of coronavirus, and others demonstrating against the demonstrators. There has been violence and even murders, to say nothing of the increasing dangers of climate change. On top of all of that, our politics are more divided and volatile than ever in my increasingly long life, at the very time in which we need unity and calm. At the point of my delivering this address, we will be 3 days past our presidential election, and all I can say now is that the next 2 weeks will bring more stress and anxiety to a country that is already suffering great stress and anxiety. What standing do I have to say anything about the impact of COVID-19? Well, perhaps my standing is based on these very facts. We, the United States of America, are living through the worst of it. Let me talk then about the response to COVID-19 in tertiary education, what we call higher education. I'll tell you what we have done, what I think we should have done instead, and what I think this means for the future. For you, the graduates of 2020 who are now finished with university, you might be thinking, oh no, a lecture, sorry about that, but I promise I'm not forgetting about you. Bear with me, and there will be a nugget or two of what traditionally passes for advice in these speeches. First, the past is prologue, right? So let me wind the clock back a little bit. Back in May, I remembered an old joke. One day, huge spaceships appeared in the air around Earth. In a simultaneous broadcast in every human language was heard, "People of Earth, we are seizing your planet. To make it habitable for our species, we will melt your polar ice caps, and in 3 days, the lands will be covered in water." Just as the people of Earth were not expecting an alien invasion in the joke, the coronavirus was not the crisis American universities were preparing for in autumn of 2019 and spring of 2020. Remember my mantra: expect nothing, anticipate nothing. The country was starting to experience a demographic drop in the number of students graduating from secondary school, which means there would be fewer students applying to universities. The drop had already started a few years before and is now a nationwide problem. The problem is most acute in Worcester's part of the country, the Northeast. At Worcester State, we were in the middle of a fight. And did I say fight? I mean a spirited discussion about the best way to address this looming problem when COVID arrived. So we had crisis upon crisis. There's one more piece of information you should know before I get back to the coronavirus. There are 3 main categories of colleges and universities in the US. I won't go into all the excruciating details about American academia. Just know that there are public institutions, private institutions, and for-profit institutions. I believe things are much the same in Nigeria. When I talk about this, I'll be talking about public institutions like Worcester State University and private institutions like Harvard. I know little about for-profit institutions or how they make decisions. How did universities in the United States meet the COVID crisis? In March, we had to make immediate decisions about health and safety, of course. But what would we do with the 2020-2021 academic year? We had in effect 3 days until the world was underwater. First, in March, all classes were moved online, and all but essential personnel moved to work from home in a very chaotic 2 weeks. Our normal week-long spring break was extended to 2 weeks. A host of emergency policies were passed in a whirlwind of cooperation between administration, faculty, and students. And we continued our planning about how to meet the coming drop in university-age students. Then, as we drew to the end of the spring term, we began to think about autumn. At Worcester State, task forces were assembled to address the various aspects of the university under the rubric of safe return to campus. These aspects were budget, communications, external relations, fiscal stimulus, academic contingency plan, development, recruitment, retention, facilities use, mental health and wellness, which is also wraparound services. I'm not going to go over each one in detail, but as I explain what happened, some of it will be clear. Well, meanwhile, decisions were being made at colleges and universities all over the country about what the fall semester would look like. The big picture question for each school was, would the classes be in person, remote, or some combination of the two? Those were not easy decisions to make because there were so many factors involved: economics, academics, and health and safety. At universities like Worcester State, we have a small cushion to absorb the loss of students. Not only do we have to maintain a certain number of students to be able to meet our budgetary goals, but we get income from having students living in the dormitories on campus. So we have to look at how many students we can afford to lose, what we call retention, and how many fewer students we can afford to enroll, recruitment, and on and on and on. I'm sure you've dealt with similar problems. Meanwhile, faculty and administrators were glued to the news. This was all happening in early May as we ended our spring 2020 term. We were learning of the progress of the pandemic in our country, and we started hearing about decisions made at other universities. Harvard was going to be fully online, no in-person classes, for instance. Professors were keeping lists, sending each other articles and links. Let me pause in my tale for a moment to bring this back to those wonderful, and I might add, patient Ito University of Iyamho graduates. What does this have to do with me and my future? I hear in the rustle of the graduation gowns in my virtual audience. Good question. Imagine, if you will, that you graduated from Harvard in spring of 2018. You had a great idea for a cafe where there would be homemade ice cream, live music, and poetry readings. And because you were a graduate of Harvard, you really knew Harvard students. So you put a plan together, you got your money lined up, and by spring of 2019, you opened your cafe. Things were going pretty well until, and can you see where this is heading? COVID hit in spring of 2020. Then you heard that none of the 6,700 Harvard students who spent their days just a short walk from your new business would be returning in the fall. You won't even have enough customers for the takeaway business that you're allowed to do during the pandemic. End of business. Around most universities, there are dozens of small businesses that exist to serve students. Those businesses have employees and buy supplies and advertise and. Worcester State, as you can tell from the name of our initiative, Safe Return, was strongly leaning towards having students come back to campus. We waited and we waited. Other universities made their decisions. We waited and we waited more. Finally, word came to us. We were going to open the campus to whichever students wanted to come. Faculty were to indicate whether their courses were going to be in person, online, or some combination thereof. I'm reminded of the words of Milton, who in Paradise Lost wrote, "Into this wild abyss, the womb of nature and perhaps her grave, of neither sea nor shore nor air nor fire, by all these and their pregnant causes mixed, confusedly, and which thus must ever fight." Have you ever heard a group of professors discuss something that is of little consequence? Ask them if, as a group, they like this particular color blue. And first they will want to define the terms. What is blue? Are we talking about a blue in light, or are we a pigment on an object? Do we actually see blue, or is the absence of blue what we see? Is that really blue, or some mixture of colors with blue being predominant? Why have we chosen blue? What are the sociological, political, ethnic, and gender issues involved in the color? What method are we using to make our final choice? Now imagine what they would be like when A, how they teach is involved, and B, when it involves the health and safety of themselves and their students. Milton also coined the word pandemonium. The federal government stepped in with funds to help the nation. Some of that came to universities. There was money that was earmarked for direct aid to students and money that was for general use. How the second part of money was to be used was up to each institution. Worcester State made a bunch of it available to faculty for funds to move classes online. I am, as you heard, the chair or head of visual and performing arts. Our department has music, fine art, and theater. The performing arts professors threw up their hands at first. How can you teach acting without having people in the same room, without seeing their faces? How can you have a music ensemble without being able to coordinate the musicians in real time? We had department meetings on Zoom and email conversations. We attended webinars, spoke with colleagues at other institutions, and shared every article we could get our hands on. From April to September, I met on Zoom several times with chairs and heads of the visual and performing arts from around the country. Those colleagues were in the throes of similar confusion. Some have been told that they must teach in person, some that they must teach online. The singers were the loudest in their dismay. Information was already available, scientific information, that there was no real safe social distancing for singers. The science was confirmed when a church choir became a super spreader event. So we wondered, if brass and wind instruments cannot be played with masks, how will we have ensembles? If actors cannot work together, how will we have plays? Well, some of the universities offered guidance to faculty about how to move online, but little or no guidance about how to make the decisions. Nationwide, workshops were offered for faculty to learn best practices for teaching online. I took 2 of those. One was billed as being for the arts, the other was for anyone. Neither answered any of the questions our arts professors were asking. We, like most public universities in America right now, are back and are about 70% online. Most of our classes are listed as blended or hybrid, part online, part in person. Well, why did I take you through all these decisions? After all, I wouldn't be surprised if you'd gone through similar conversations at Ada University, Iyamho. I wonder if anyone noticed the mistake we made. It took me about two months to see it. Let me give you the working groups again. Budget, communications, external relations, fiscal stimulus, academic contingency plan, development, recruitment, retention, facilities use, mental health and wellness, wraparound services. Of the 10 areas, 2 are about communication, inside and outside communication. Facilities use covers the buildings, including dormitories, classrooms, studios, and laboratories. That, along with mental health and wellness and wraparound services, are really about health and safety. There was a strong emphasis that continues on the financial end of things. The big fear, and my guess is that it was well-founded, was that not enough students would return for the fall term for us to maintain our minimum financial base to operate. It was pretty clear from news reports around the country that many institutions were facing the same question. In fact, marketing professor Scott Galloway of New York University is predicting that more than 20% of American colleges and universities could fail during COVID, and that close to 30% could be left with severe financial damage. The conclusions that he and his colleagues draw, while too complicated to go through today, are debatable but compelling and not a little chilling. At Worcester State, our numbers have been poor but sustainable. We saw a drop of around 7%. This is due to our demographics in our area and the kind of student that traditionally enrolls at our university. Our projections determined that if we kept our losses under 10%, we would be able to get by. A host of decisions were affected by the budgetary projections, not the least of which was how many part-time professors we could keep on our payroll, which of course had an impact on the number and the types of classes that would be offered. We're still dealing with these questions as we prepare our schedules for the second term. We have not been encouraged by the number of secondary school students participating in our recruitment open houses. Normally, our open houses are held in the gymnasium on campus. Usually about 600 people, students and families, show up for each of the 3 events we offer. This year, as will surprise no one, we are holding our open houses on Zoom. I have one tomorrow, in fact. 70 people showed up at the first one, total, for all 21 academic departments. Early indications are that this might be a national trend. We are worried. What will the next academic year bring? If we don't have a viable vaccine in time and cannot return fully to campus, will enough students enrolled? Faced with all those economic problems, we focused a large amount of our time and energy on methods for softening the blow we saw coming. However, and here's the mistake we made, there's only one task force that dealt with academics, and it only dealt with contingencies. It asked, what will happen if? Academics, the courses of study, the degrees that we offer from a business perspective, the product of the university. Academics, the acquisition and production of knowledge is our core mission. Dormitories are not the core mission. Budgets are not the core mission. Mental health and physical health, as important as they are not our core mission. All of those things, everything covered by 9 of the 10 task forces, are necessary aspects in support of the core mission. We, and by we I mean tertiary education in the United States, approached the crisis backwards. Finances have led the discussion, devised a scenario that fit the economic and pandemic forecasts, consulted, in the case of public institutions, with the state, and told professors what their options were, if any. Imagine, if you will, being on the board of directors of an automobile manufacturing company that is suddenly facing a catastrophic disruption in the supply of material and parts. You look at the budget numbers, make decisions about how to keep the business solvent, ask everyone to do their part to keep costs in line, but never ask the engineers and factory workers how this will affect the cars that they make. To quote Vizzini, the Sicilian criminal genius in the movie The Princess Bride, inconceivable. In the spring, the university had entered into crisis mode. In crisis mode, you don't have time to consider deeply, to think of all the implications and variables. Crisis thinking was necessary in March when the university pivoted from normal operations to being fully remote in the span of 2 weeks. After that, we needed to change to planning mode. We made the change, but we brought the crisis mode with us. For those of you who are graduating, this is an important lesson. Once you've entered into crisis mode, it's very hard to get out of it. Crisis mode sets the expectation and anticipation of the worst happening into all of your strategies. Crisis mode works well when you're in a crisis, but it's a great hindrance when you are not, because the goals will not be clear. Whenever you have time to plan, and plan thoroughly, you should take that time, even if the time is short. Are you wondering about the joke I started to tell? Remember, the aliens said, people of Earth, we've decided to seize your planet to make it habitable for our species. We will melt your polar ice caps, and in 3 days, the lands will drown underwater. Well, missiles and planes were sent, but had no effect. And in despair, the leaders in North and South America said to their people, we've done what we can. You have 3 days to live. In Europe, Asia, and Australia, the leaders said, there's nothing more we can do. You have 3 days to live. They were in crisis mode. But in Africa, the leaders gathered their people together and said, we have survived war, famine, disease, and colonization. Now, we have 3 days to learn how to breathe underwater. Through May, June, and July, August, Worcester State had time to consider and plan. There was still a huge amount to be done, and we did a good job considering the enormous uncertainties of the pandemic. But we made a crucial mistake. We operated under the expectation that the change to fully remote instruction in March meant that all we needed to do was choose that again in the fall. Expectation and anticipation. There they are again. I am not suggesting that the university should have dropped all the planning around fiscal matters, health and safety, recruitment, et cetera. Not at all. They are necessary. With enrollment uncertain, state revenues deeply affected, and a pandemic that remains at a raging high across the nation, it would be foolish to ignore the impacts on our budget and the campus. But those things should be in support of the academic mission, not the other way around. What if, instead of saying, tell us if your classes will be held online, in person, or in some blended fashion, the administration had said to professors and to the departments, we have to reconceive education at Worcester State for the COVID era, and we don't have much time. Let me put this into perspective with an illustration from my own teaching. I direct 2 plays each year. In March or April, we normally decide what the plays will be for the next academic year. That just wasn't feasible in 2020. We didn't know whether plays could be performed remotely, not to mention what the plays would be. As I told you earlier, I was in meeting with heads and chairs from all over the country. The question came up about how to do plays. Some said they didn't know yet. Some said, we do what we've been doing, online readings and radio drama. One person said, we've been told we have to be in person, so we'll do plays in masks and socially distanced. There followed an uncomfortable silence until one person ventured, "How will the audience know who's talking if their mouths are covered?" Besides figuring out how to do the shows, we had to ask who will come to see a show under these conditions. Back in the summer, we had no idea whether people would venture to a theater, even if the state regulations allowed them to be open. Our theater at Worcester State seats 166 people, but it is now rated for 19 people under COVID safe distancing. Believe me, the only thing harder than getting 19 people who aren't sitting close together to laugh is to get laughs from a bunch of people on Zoom. We were grappling with two sets of competing expectations. What our institutions were telling us on the one hand, and the pedagogical demands of our discipline on the other. Over the summer, I realized that I needed to understand what a production on Zoom would and could be. I had to conduct research. I had to talk to other people, watch what others were doing, experiment a bit, and most of all, think about it a lot. Plus, I needed to think about what kinds of plays we could possibly do. How long should they be? What should the focus be on? Should we care about the play's theme? One of the most important things I teach my students is that theater as an art is a medium for showing the audience what it means to be human at this time and place. Here we are in America in the throes of a once in a century pandemic, in the midst of the most contentious and acrimonious presidential election that I've witnessed in almost 50 years of voting, grappling with the long-term effects of systemic racism and a truly crippling economic downturn. Somehow, we have to meet the moment with a play. Should it be a balm on our collective anxieties and fears, or should it meet them head on? Which of these unignorable problems should we address, if any, and which should we ignore? And I had to balance those decisions with our department's ability to actually produce the play under what would be less than desirable circumstances. Well, what the university wants me to tell them is whether I will teach online, in person, or in a blend of the two. What our administration could have done, and I haven't heard of any US college or university doing this, they could have given us 3 months or even 2 and told us, you have 3 days to learn to breathe underwater. 2 months to redesign tertiary education for our institution. It's a terrifying thought and a daunting task. However, it is no more terrifying or daunting than what we are currently going through. Imagine for a moment the spirited discussions that would occur as we grappled with the implications. What does it mean for each discipline to be taught in these different modalities? How will the students handle it? How do we keep students motivated and engaged and safe? How do we compensate for the lost communal time for our students? Can we build that into our curriculum? We could have been asking, what will education at Worcester State be during the COVID era? Could this have changed the problem of recruitment? I believe so. As I said, attendance at our first open house was down from about 600 to about 70, a drop of 88%. Our administration was counting on a new set of requirements for all students that was designed to combat the change in demographics of college-age students. But the world has shifted. We shouldn't expect the COVID era students, secondary school students who had completed their final year before college online to care about the same things. We shouldn't anticipate that that program will bring new students because the students now have different priorities. What would have been the reaction of potential students if the message from the university was, we know you are concerned about your education during this time. Our professors have redesigned the curriculum to meet the pandemic crisis. In the US, it is almost a joke when a company puts the words new and improved on the package for a product. Our cereal used to be round, now it's square, it's new and improved. Here, though, is a case where new and improved is just what we need. We have to open our eyes and see the world that is in front of us, not the world we expect. The people who can decide what new and improved means in this case are the professors. The administration can tell us if we can afford it, they can market it, but they cannot design it. I'm not just looking back with, if you'll excuse the expression, 2020 hindsight. My topic is the impact of COVID-19 on tertiary education, a view from the West and possible implication for African universities. Possible implications. I'm not going to prescribe what to do here or anywhere else in Africa or anywhere at all for that matter. We've had quite enough of that, thank you very much, of people in my part of the world telling people in your part of the world how to live their lives. I've already established that I don't have the correct frame of reference, and I don't think that's what you're looking for. What I can do is approach the problem with a theater artist's eye. Dr. Thomas Conroy of our Urban Studies Department likes to tell the story of being in a design meeting of a play we were collaborating on. Also there was Professor Stacy Parker of Fine Arts. At one point, Professor Parker asked, could we put a car on stage? Dr. Conroy fully anticipated that we would scoff. Instead, what followed was a quick discussion of why a car would be a good idea. Then we discussed the size of the car possible, whether it needed to be functional or decorative, and the different ways we could get it into the building and up one flight. We in academia, at least in American academia, are in danger of expecting that after COVID, the world will return to the old way of being where you don't put cars on stage. History would suggest that rather than a return to the old normal, the wheel will turn. The most common comparison to COVID being made these days is to the Spanish influenza of 1918, which likely killed upward of 50 million worldwide. A plague of that nature cannot but change the world. I don't pretend to be able to unravel the Gordian knot of history, but there are some connections we can make. And despite my own mantra, expect nothing, anticipate nothing, some assumptions we might be able to make. In a story on the radio program, Radiolab from New York, WNYC Radio in New York, John Berry of Tulane University explained that during negotiations after World War I, US President Woodrow Wilson appears to have contracted the Spanish flu. He and the French Prime Minister, Georges Clemenceau, have been at loggerheads. Wilson stressed peace and unity. Clemenceau wanted to bring Germans to their knees. With Wilson unable to continue the negotiations because of illness, Clemenceau got his way, and the Treaty of Versailles contained harsh terms for Germany. They were so harsh, in fact, that they contributed to the economic conditions that led to the rise of Adolf Hitler. Now, that's just one event with many cases of influenza, and we could say it was something of a fluke. Even when you combine it with the speculation that Gandhi contracted the Spanish flu, leading to repudiation of his support for World War I and eventually leading to India's independence from Great Britain, we don't really have an argument that the Spanish influenza changed the world. Certainly, those might be examples of how the Spanish influenza influenced history. But if that's the way we're looking at 1918, we're probably missing the big picture. World War I caused the deaths of about 20 million people and, in the process, ended the old world order. Yet we think that the Spanish flu, with 50 million deaths, did not contribute to worldwide change? 50 million people, it beggars the imagination. To think that a pandemic that killed 50 million did not have a profound effect on human history, well, it's inconceivable. My mother's mother, Esther Grace Sheffrin Troy, was born in 1900. As she approached her 100th birthday, I asked her about all she had seen in the 20th century. World wars, the Great Depression, the Cold War, air travel, television, space flight, computers. We talked about a lot of things, but she never once mentioned the Spanish flu. It was as if it never happened. 675,000 Americans died and she didn't think to mention it. Now I see all we're going through with COVID-19, and I wonder how much of an effect that earlier plague had on my grandmother's life, on everyone's life in 1918 and 1919. When you live in fear that you will catch a life-threatening disease and there is no effective cure, how does that change you? In the United States, anxiety is high. So is insomnia. Many people have unsettling dreams nightly. There is constant stress. There is speculation that a large portion of the population will have some form of post-traumatic stress disorder when all this is done. How will that change the world on the other side of the pandemic? How will we as a species be different? If we think the world will return to the way it was before, we are fooling ourselves. When I said to myself, expect nothing, anticipate nothing, I meant I shouldn't allow my view as a white American from the northeast part of the United States, a Yankee, if you will, to define what I saw and experienced in Nigeria. I was a stranger in a strange land. I needed to let the land and its people teach me what and who they were rather than to define it by my own terms. That's a gargantuan task, exhausting really, but the rewards can be tremendous. We don't always know what assumptions we are making, so we have to constantly examine our own motivations and assumptions. It's most obvious when we travel to a new country. If you can handle another story, in 1993, my wife, Amy, and I took a company of actors to Russia to perform. We also took our 20-month-old daughter, which meant that in our first week there, Amy and I averaged about 2 hours of sleep per night each. At the end of that week, our hosts took us to Moscow to do some sightseeing. We were waiting in queue for the Kremlin to open when Amy and I had a sudden need for the kind of discussion that married people often have when they've had too little sleep. We stepped out of the queue, me carrying our daughter, snow lightly falling, to have a private marital discussion. Then I felt a tug on my arm. A Russian policeman was there and talking to me. I'm a child of the Cold War. As much as I love people and I'm interested in them, the sight of this officer in his great coat down to his ankles and his peaked cap, well, I knew what that signified. And though I didn't understand a word of Russian, it was clear he was saying, "Come with me." Amy and I tried to explain in English that we were with a tour group. He repeated in Russian, "Come with me." That's it, I thought. I'm being arrested at the Kremlin for breaking some law I don't even know exists. One of our Russian hosts hurried over to help. It turned out the officer was saying, "It's cold outside and you have the baby. Why don't you come in here where it's warm and sit down until the Kremlin opens?" Expectation and anticipation. I'm not here to suggest that everyone should travel. Oh, I think travel is good if you have the opportunity, but not everyone can and not everyone wants to. I understand that. So it's not about traveling, at least not traveling to a different country. We should be prepared to travel to an unknown future. By we, I mean administration, staff, and students. By we, I mean everyone. By we, I most particularly mean you, 2020 graduates of Edo University of Iyamho, because you are the ones who will be making that future. I believe that we must start planning for the world to come. We have to start asking ourselves some hard questions. What will the post-COVID world look like? How will COVID impact our own region of the world? What changes will be necessary to tertiary education? And how the heck do we plan for a future that is impossible to predict? It boggles the mind, but I believe we should begin to ask those questions. Consider what we're facing in the US. Our first year students who started at Worcester State in September 2020 finished their last year of secondary education online. In our part of the country, at least they did not have a traditional, at least here, they did not have a traditional graduation ceremony or the celebrations that followed. They started their final year of secondary school with ideas of what their lives would be like afterwards, that glorious next step to adulthood. Only then. And what of the class that follows in the fall of 2021? They will have spent even more of their secondary school education with COVID conditions. Some of them will have started school in person, then switched to remote learning, then switched back again. The level of uncertainty that young American students experienced before the pandemic was already substantial. In 2016, universities across the United States saw the beginning of a steep rise in the number of students reporting problems related to stress and anxiety. Mental health issues overall were rising. Those numbers continued to climb into early 2020, and by now have been exacerbated by the coronavirus. Add to that the economic stresses I mentioned earlier. We cannot expect students applying to our university, to any university in the United States, to have the same outlook as students who started back in the fall of 2019. As I said before, I am not prescribing an American solution to a situation here in Nigeria. What we have is a mess. And before thinking that our situation isn't relevant to Nigeria tertiary education, consider this. Up to this point, online learning has been a relatively small portion of tertiary education. There was a big push to create online courses, and in the United States, at least, several for-profit online universities. In the majority of cases, however, online learning has been viewed as inferior to in-person classes. But COVID has moved so many professors online that there are now hundreds of minds working on methods to use that medium more effectively. In my own department, full-time and part-time professors are working on the problem. Not a week goes by that I don't hear from at least one who wants to try something new or wants to know if funding exists for a new idea. For us, as you might imagine, the idea of teaching permanently and fully online is anathema. The very nature of teaching the arts is built upon an assumption of personal contact with our students. A student contacted me recently to ask if she could complete a Bachelor of Arts in Visual and Performing Arts fully online. When I raised this with the department staff, two answers were evident. First, if this student were in her final year now, of course she could finish remotely. Everything is possible online at the moment. We have art, music, and theater students doing their senior theses online this academic year. Second, as a department, we are not ready to commit to maintaining a fully online presence after the pandemic. We don't have enough information, and we have postponed that discussion until the end of the 2020-2021 academic year. Still, at some point, someone is going to crack the online learning process wide open. There are too many minds, good minds, around the world dealing with it right now to assume that it won't happen. If that happens, we will need to reconsider our institutions and their place in the global marketplace of education. We shouldn't expect that tertiary education will remain the same. As a university, you are very new. This is your second convocation. You do have some traditions because there is a history of education in your fine country, but you're also building the traditions that will define your university in a way that is different from the other universities in Edo State, and indeed across Nigeria. Because of your newness as an institution, you are in a singular position to adapt. If you anticipate that the world will continue on the same course that it was on before the pandemic, you may find there are difficult times ahead. I believe that it would be best to stay aware of what is happening around you and be prepared to adapt. Planning for an uncertain time, an uncertain future might seem difficult, but it'd be far preferable to panicking at the last minute. You may have heard what happened in the shops in the US, and I think much of the world at the beginning of the pandemic. People started to hoard. People went to the stores and bought rice, beans, flour, hand sanitizer, 91% alcohol, and bleach in large quantities. The surprise was that they also bought lots and lots of bathroom tissue. Why? Because they thought the shops might close and they would run out of the very things they needed the most. And what was an unusual experience for many Americans, they went to the market and there was no rice, beans, flours, etc. There was no bathroom tissue to be bought. No one thought about how the hoarding would affect the supply chain. It turns out that there are two separate supply chains for bathroom tissue in the United States. one for domestic use and one for commercial use, and ne'er the twain shall meet. The two supply chains are not connected. So people staying home meant a greater strain on that supply chain, and the stores ran out of product. Meanwhile, the commercial supply chain was rolling in product and had no customers. Expectation and anticipation. But no one thought it through or even thought they needed to. I don't want to overwork the analogy. We could be in danger of not thoroughly analyzing the changes that are thrust upon us. We should be making plans about how and what we need to change to meet the future. So what should we do in tertiary education? And don't think I've forgotten, what does this have to do with the now graduating class from the university? I believe we have to start asking some very difficult questions. What do we already know about tertiary education during the COVID era? What do we know about students? What do we know about the students who are coming in the next few years? How has the coronavirus changed the way they see the world? How has it changed the way they see themselves? How has it changed the way they see their education? And what changes might be happening in the world at large that we need to prepare our students for? Are our students prepared technologically? What other questions should we be asking? What we need are people who are used to asking questions, gathering data, asking more questions, gathering more data, asking more questions, and finally, starting to put together possible answers. What we need are professors with their keen minds and annoying questions. Those questions have a purpose. They always have a purpose. My questions are meant to teach my students to ask those kinds of questions themselves. That's how I was taught. Generally, after 2 years or so of me pestering my students with questions, they start to ask themselves the questions, only to discover that I have more questions. I was speaking recently to one of our alumni who is now a professional actor. He told me that the way I ran rehearsals prepared him well for professional work. I was flattered and more than a little self-satisfied. I was annoying, and it worked. We need to ask ourselves tough and annoying questions now. Well, first we have to ask what questions we need to ask. It should come as no surprise that we already have a lot of data, just not in a formalized structure. And speaking with other professors 2 half terms into this pandemic, we know we can't cover as much material as we do in our face-to-face classes. We can cover more material now than we could in April. Students' attention spans are shorter than they are in face-to-face classes. Student attention spans are longer than they were back in April. Most students prefer to be in person, but they are adapting. At Worcester State, we've already started to gather other kinds of data, hard data. And one of the most exciting examples of interdisciplinary work I've seen in my 14+ years in academia, a COVID archive has been started involving work by the Departments of Urban Studies, History, Health Sciences, Education, Sociology, Criminal Justice, English, Earth Sciences, Nursing, World Languages, Psychology, Visual and Performing Arts, and the University Library. Studies are being conducted on the physical and mental health effects of the COVID era and the disease. Oral histories are being collected. Sociological studies are happening. The work of student artists in music, theater, and fine arts are being collected. Not only will this provide needed data, but it will provide the framework for discussions moving forward. Similar data gathering initiatives are happening at other universities in the US, though I don't know of any that are so broad in their academic involvement. On a side note, because of the nature of our department, we are in the beginning stages of an interdisciplinary arts performance based on material that we will pull from the archive. Art, music, and theater professors are involved, and professors from other departments have expressed their interest. If we can engage with these questions and the data we are collecting, we might be able to adapt to the future when it becomes the present. Consider what could happen if the online learning code is cracked. Why would a student go to Worcester State University when they could be if they are accepted, they could attend McGill in Montreal, or they could attend Edo University Iyamho for that matter. But why would a student from Ajimbodi attend Edo University Iyamho if they could attend Cambridge University without leaving home? Will one of the impacts of the COVID era on tertiary education be that there is more domestic and international competition for students? World War I was followed in the United States by an economic boom that we referred to as the Roaring 20s. Some at that time referred to it as a decade-long party. The 1920s was also a period during which immigration to the United States was severely limited for people from Italy, Poland, Greece, and China. A large reason for these limitations was to curtail the number of Catholics and Chinese allowed into the country. Eastern European Jews were added to that list. And there was a resurgence of activity from the Ku Klux Klan, America's most notorious white nationalist organization. As I look at the results of dealing with the coronavirus today, I wonder how much of this party and this hate was a reaction to the Spanish flu more than to the recently completed war. Even if COVID does not create a more robust online university education, though I think it will, we still must reckon with changes to our prospective students. Will they as a generation wish to forget that the pandemic happened, as apparently my grandmother's generation did? Or will they embrace the memories? Will they be aware of how the months of quarantine and economic downturn affects how they view their education as well as how they view the world? The US is already going through a political upheaval, which even our election of 2020 will not settle. Many of the decisions of the current administration are affecting tertiary education as much as the viruses. Nigeria too is experiencing turmoil, and many other places around the world. While it is reasonable to assume that COVID is exacerbating the issues in many countries, we should not expect those issues to magically disappear when we have a vaccine. Expect nothing, anticipate nothing. I've begun to speak about these ideas on my own campus. I have to approach the subject carefully. Last week, I mentioned to a colleague, one of the younger leaders amongst the faculty, that we might want to start thinking about how COVID will change education at the university level. He sighed and shook his head. You're right, but I'm just so tired. Change for a university takes time, and we don't have a lot of time to spare. If there is an implication for tertiary education in Africa, this is it. The world is changing in front of our eyes, and we, the educators of the next generation of leaders, cannot afford to wait to see the results. We must prepare. We must put our considerable skills and abilities to work to design an education system for a future that will be upon us before we know it. That's true for the University of Africa. That's true for the universities of the United States. And if we start the work now, we might, just might, be able to stay one step ahead. And for you, Edo University Iyamho's second graduating class, I fear I may have painted a world that is too dark. That is not my intent. I am, however, trying to be realistic. My message is for you to expect nothing, anticipate nothing. Oh, most certainly look to your families. See in them the foundation of who you are, the generations that created you, that helped you define your ethics, your curiosity, your ambitions, and your hopes and dreams. See in your professors the foundation of your knowledge and the skills in your area of study. They have taught you about law, science, engineering, medical science, clinical science, arts management, and social science. They've taught you how to think, use that. Think, analyze, collect data, think some more. Always try to see the world with fresh eyes. Don't expect, don't anticipate. See what's really there. If you rely on your foundation, trust your education, and utilize your cogitation, you will be in a fine position to plan for the new future. Don't expect my generation to solve the problem for you. You are the next generation of leaders, and you will be generating ideas that will lead us through the post-COVID era. At the end of the last rehearsal of every play I direct at Worcester State University, I gather all the students together. Why do we do this, I say? Sure, it is exciting. We like the attention and it feels good, but that's not the real reason. The real reason we do it is to show the audience what it means to be a human being. That is the purpose of theater, to show us what it means to be human. If one person leaves our performance seeing the world in a new way and says to themselves, I never knew that before, now I understand, our play will be a success. Graduates of Edo University Iyamho, you have worked hard to reach this point in your lives. Now, help us see the world in a new way. Lead us to the future. Thank you.
Thank you, guest lecturer, Professor Adam Zahler. Your lecture was very conversational, and it went from the humanities to the sciences, to the social sciences, and to epidemiology. We are glad that we got you to talk to us, and I can tell you that we are very happy with the lecture that you have given. We have very distinguished members of the audience who are going to give goodwill messages after we have taken the questions and answers. Let me put the members on notice. Our Chancellor, Dr. Aderemi Makundwola, we know you are still there. You'll give a goodwill message to this convocation lecture. Professor Sudhakar Kota, Vice Chancellor, Skyline University, Kano. You will also give us a goodwill message. Engineer UPN Ugochukwu, former executive member of the Nigerian Society of Engineers. We know you are here, you would also give us a goodwill message. Let me say that Professor Zahler has said that expect nothing and anticipate nothing. But in this lecture, we have expected so much and we anticipated so much and we got so much. So it's not just that we are expecting nothing and getting nothing. We expected and we anticipated and we got. But he has posed very many things for our consumption. In the COVID era, he says we must ask ourselves very difficult, very challenging, and very frustrating questions, which will prod us to do the things that we're supposed to do. For instance, what do we already know about education in the COVID era? He asked. Are our students and staff technologically wired to be able to deal with the challenges of this era? What is the attitude of people? What would be the new environment that this COVID would offer the world and would therefore begin to pose the problem that we need to resolve as academics, as scholars, and as students? I think there are a number of things that he has said to us. It says, let us reconsider the new normal, especially also along the lines of sustainability, because a problem may arise in adapting and implementation. But something that he made very clear was that he cannot afford to be prescriptive because the environments are different. America remains America, Africa remains Africa. Contextually, we may find ways of dealing with these issues within the context of the environment in which we have found ourselves. Having said all this, let me now ask that if there are questions and comments I would like to make, please indicate by raising up your hand electronically. And when you do that, we will recognize you and ask you to give your comment or ask your questions. Professor Zahler would do well by noting all the questions and comments, and then he will have a single stretch to respond to all. May I now invite those who have questions or comments to indicate by raising their hands electronically, and we will take them. Thank you very much. If you have a question, you have a comment, just indicate by showing your hand electronically and we will recognize you. Ooh. I know that the lecture was very conversational, but I think that there may be issues that the lecturer has touched that some of us may want to react to or respond to. Yes, Abu Razak, we can see your hand up. You have the floor, Abu Razak.
Thank you very much, Prof. I want to first of all thank, can you hear me, please?
Yes.
Yeah, good. I want to thank Professor Zahler for this lecture, mind-blowing, very educated. Now, with respect to the post-COVID-19 era, vis-a-vis the economic situation of this country, Nigeria now, marrying it with what happens in the United States. Now, Prof told us about universities in the United States being either public, private, or profit-driven. In Nigeria, we practically have the same thing, public, private, as the case might be. Now, you also mentioned about a open activity where 700 persons were seen last year, and this year they have about 70 or 600 persons, and this year they have about 70. Invariably reducing whatever amount of finances they were expecting to have from the program. Now, the Nigeria educational system, particularly the state-owned institutions, rely very heavily on whatever is derived from school fees, coupled with whatever government brings as subvention. Now we have COVID, and we are going to a post-COVID era. And then because of the situation, economic situation, the revenue that was accruable to the states and to the federation has dropped drastically. Therefore, the government is unable to meet up with the financial, the financial part of its own contribution to the universities. The universities are made to now generate their IGRO or increase their IGRO. I want to ask Prof, if they ever have such situations in the United States, and even if they don't have such situations in the United States, what advice would you have for Nigeria university management? Thank you.
Could you repeat the question just a little more slowly for me?
Okay. Now, in our country, the public universities most especially depend on the government for subvention. Now, in the course of the COVID pandemic, the amount of revenue accruable to the federation and to states drastically reduced. Invariably, the subvention coming from the government to the universities equally reduced. And now we depend on the government for subventions. Yet we have some, we have enough students, but our kind of university is more of a social responsibility than profit-driven. Remember you said it is either profit-driven or it is knowledge-driven. Now, ours is more or less a social responsibility. It is not profit-driven. Most of the institutions in Nigeria is not profit-driven. Okay, it is like what the state owes the citizens. Now, our IGRO have dropped. Government IGRO have dropped. Subventions coming to universities have dropped. We do have the students, but then there's a problem. When you increase school fees in Nigeria, you are calling for war. That is the truth. No matter the amount you have increased it to, no matter how small, people will agitate. Now, I'm asking, if you have such situations in the United States, or even if you don't have such situations in the United States, how would you advise us to go about, succumbing a situation like this?
Well, it's hard. I think one of the things I tried to establish early in my talk is that it's very hard for me to give a real piece of advice. Among other things, we face so many of the same problems. Let's just acknowledge that. For us, state revenues are down, and there's a whole question of how much financial support we're going to get from the state. And the governor said one thing, but it hasn't yet been passed through the legislature, so we don't have money, and so our economic future remains uncertain. And how we deal with that, each on our own, is difficult because our political systems are not the same. And how we deal with the political systems as members of an educational institution is also going to be different. What I would hope is that the process, by turning it around to say, what do you as professors envision needs to be done, first, by asking that question and then saying, can we afford to do that, would lead to more firm and sustainable decisions going forward at the institution to have an educational system that will suit the needs of the moment. I don't want to get involved in the politics even. I mean, I'm involved in politics because I'm a citizen, not because I'm a professor. I'm a professor of theater. I don't get involved in politics except to make sure that my department has the money that I think we need. Other than that, it really isn't my concern. My concern, though, is to make sure that the education for our students is the best possible. I don't know if that answers your question or not.
Well, I think that that has provided some leeway for him. If he has further questions, we will know. Is there any other person indicating by raising his or her hand electronically to ask a question or make a comment? We have an opportunity. Unless, of course, there's none, then we will go on to take the goodwill messages. If there are no more questions, it tells me that we have understood perfectly the conversation that Professor Adam Zahler has had with us and the intriguing questions that are brewing our minds, which we need to find answers and solutions to. At this point, therefore, let me just mention that Professor Adam Zahler and Professor Jim Bogatti have been visitors to this university even before the university opened its doors. And therefore, Professor Jim Bogatti will be one of those who will give a goodwill message before the close of this business. Let me at this point now invite our Chancellor, Dr. Adiremi Mokojola, to please give his goodwill message to this event. Chancellor, sir.
If I may, Professor Okako, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I actually have an important meeting that I have to go to that's dealing with COVID problems. My apologies, but I have to leave.
Thank you very much. We appreciate your time, and you may leave, sir.
Thank you very much, and thank you for inviting me.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you much. Thank you very much, Professor Zahler. I appreciate it.
Can we have may I humbly ask the Chancellor to please give his goodwill message?
Yeah, good afternoon, everybody. I want to maintain the protocol that the Vice Chancellor already stated earlier, but I must first thank the Minister for sending his representative, who has been very, very good in our presentation, and I commend her for coming and staying with us. To Professor Adam Zahler, it is a good thing that you've been able to join us and to give us a lot of food for thought. What I've seen that is emanating, and which University of that Edo University has been practicing is that they are trying to adapt, not to the old system, but to the new system. And this has been quite visible in terms of what other universities have seen that we are doing. It was heart-gladdening to see that our Vice Chancellor was singled out at the last webinar that was organized to tell everybody what we are doing that is making us to be able to sustain our activities. And it is a very commendable thing that adaptation is the key word in COVID era, because you just have to look for a way to adapt and also to initiate, which is the theme and part of what the professor mentioned to us, and which I commend to the graduates to be able to look forward to adapting in many ways. You can see now government is looking for money everywhere to make ends meet, even to operate the government. So they pay you salary in one hand, they are taxing you in very many other ways. How then do you expect the university to sustain itself, except if they can adapt and ensure that COVID, when it comes and goes, does not leave us in tatters. I commend the lecturer for his good messages and all the rest of that on the university. And I'm very proud to be part of the university because of what I've seen in the last 1 year that I've been involved with the university system of Edo University. They've been forthcoming, forthright in everything that they are doing. And they are doing their best to ensure that cutting costs will ensure that they sustain and help the students to achieve success. To this, I thank everybody who have been able to come to participate, and we wish the Prof, Adam Zahler, all the very best. Thank you very much. I'm grateful.
Thank you very much, Chancellor, Dr. Adiremi Makanjola, for that wonderful goodwill message. We would like to invite Professor Jane Bogatti to also speak to us. Jim Bogatti knows this environment. She has been here before. Jane, you have the floor. Thank you.
Well, first I have to unmute before I can have the floor. Let me say what a privilege it's been for me to be here with you during this second convocation. I first came to Nigeria in 1971 and worked in Edo North for the 3 years I was doing research for my PhD degree. I've been back there much more recently, of course, between 2013 and 2017, teaching at the University of Benin, but traveling north to Ukpala and the various other ethnicities of Edo North to just to touch base, if nothing else. I'm very impressed by how you are using technology for education. And that's one of the things that I learned by being here with you today. Certainly, I would like to congratulate all the professors who are working in this difficult time, and certainly all the graduates who are responding to that work, and to wish them, the graduates in particular, them luck in creating Nigeria's future, and indeed in creating the future of the world. Thank you.
We appreciate your goodwill message, Professor Jean Bogatti. We'd like at this point to invite the Vice Chancellor of Skyline University, Professor Kota, to please give a goodwill message.
Thank you so much for giving me the floor. I hope I'm audible. Yeah. It's a wonderful moment for me. Yeah, it's a wonderful moment for me to be with the Edo University Convocation ceremony. And let me share some of my thoughts over here. I have been teaching the students of Nigeria way back in 1983 in India. Almost till 1992, I was teaching a large number of Nigerian students. And now that I've come back to Nigeria as a Vice Chancellor, as one of the most wonderful events that has happened in my life. And today, attending the convocation of Edo University, I would like to congratulate the VC, the professors, the whole team who are supporting the students and the academia in this tough times of COVID to be a successful graduates that we are going to pass out tomorrow. One of the important things that the students must learn here is whether they have faced tough times before or not, but at least while they are graduating, they have seen COVID as an example, how the times are tough. And this is not the first time that they may face now. In future also they may face. It's a very good learning for them, how to overcome the difficult periods. And I'm sure the students will learn a lot of lessons more than us, how to use the technology, how to face these difficult times, and also how to swim through the tough times and still be sustainable in their careers, in their life, and continue their lifelong learning. So wish them all the best and wish that they contribute to the nation building and their self-building in future. Congratulations to the whole team of Edo University. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Kota, for that wonderful goodwill message. And finally, we'd like to ask Engineer UPN Ugochukwu, former executive of the Nigerian Society of Engineers, to please give his goodwill message.
Thank you, Prof. Are you hearing me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Sincerely, it is great for me to be here. I look forward to this from the very first day I saw the invitation. And I planned that come rain, come sun, I must be here. And thank God I am here. Not just that I'm here, that I am seeing, I am a witness to the fact that Edo University of yesterday is setting the pace. That Edo University is proving that Nigerian engineers can do it well.
All right.
That we can build a great Nigeria. Prof, congratulations. The entire team of Edo University, congratulations. I have not been to Edo University. Within the next few days, I must be there to see with my own eyes.
All right. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Engineer Ugochukwu. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, this event is actually gradually coming to an end, but we will not wind up without acknowledging the presence of many of our guests who have logged in. Professor Samuel Olowo, we recognize that we're here. We thank you and welcome you to this event. Dr. Mutala Muhammad, who is representing the Vice Chancellor, Adamawa State University, we welcome you to this event. Alhaji Ademola Oladosu, General Manager, Daily Trust, we welcome you to this event. Dr. Aliyu Bello Mohammed, we also like to welcome you to this event. Let me welcome in a special manner Engineer Felix Ebuzome, who represents the Federal Ministry of Works and is a member of Current Council. He's also the member who represents the ministry in Current. We'd like to welcome all of you to this event. The next thing is the presentation of awards by the university to some of our guests. At this point, let me invite the Vice Chancellor to please present the awards virtually, and then we will deliver the awards physically at the earliest opportunity. Thank you very much, Mr. Vice Chancellor.
The first award is to the chairman of the ceremony, Malam Adamu, Honorable Minister of Education, as chairman at the second convocation lecture of Edo University, Iyamho. The second award is to the speaker, the guest lecturer for today's event, Professor Adam Zahler, Worcester State University, USA. The third award is to the special guest of honor for today's occasion, Professor Yakubu Ochefu, who is the Secretary General of the Association of Vice Chancellors of Nigerian Universities. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
His Excellency, sir, Mr. Godwin Obaseki, the Executive Governor of Edo State, and visitor to the university. His Excellency, right, our Chancellor, Dr. Aderemi Mokajwala, and Chairman of the occasion, the Honorable Minister of Education, Malam Adamu, ably represented by Professor Lilian Salami, Vice Chancellor, University of Benin, Honorable Commissioner for Education, Barrister Honorable Jimo Jegbai, the Convocation Lecturer, Professor Adamu Zahler, Worcester State University, Worcester, United States, and his distinguished guests. Please permit me to stand on the existing protocol already established by the Vice Chancellor, Professor Engineer Aluyo. It is with great honor that I give this vote of thanks. On behalf of the Governing Council, Senate, State, staff, and students of Edo University, Iyamho, I sincerely thank our visitor to the university, His Excellency, Mr. Godwin Obaseki, Executive Governor of Edo State, and visitor to the university, for accepting to attend this second convocation lecture. The chairman of the occasion, Malam Adamu, Honorable Minister for Education, ably represented by Professor Lilian Salami, for accepting to chair this occasion of the second convocation lecture. Special thanks go to our convocation lecturer, Professor Adam Zahler of Worcester State University, Worcester, Massachusetts, USA, for his wonderful lecture and for accepting to deliver the second convocation lecture. A very special thanks go to our Chancellor, Dr. Aderemi Mokajwala, for his fatherly role in the university. Thank you, sir. Now for Education, Barrister Jimo Jegbai, thank you for your support. Our distinguished guest of honor, Professor Yakub Echefu, Secretary General of Committee of Vice Chancellor of Nigerian Universities, all Vice Chancellors present here, registrars of Nigerian universities, rectors of polytechnics for attending this lecture. Our royal fathers, we thank you. We appreciate you for honoring our invitation. Thank you all, and God bless.
Thank you very much, Registrar. At this point, we've come to the end of this event. We will go to the closing formalities. We will take the university anthem and then follow that quickly to the national anthem. May we rise for the anthem.
Another session.
Edo University Iyamho, a game changer in academic in Nigeria. Edo University Iyamho, located along kilometer 7 Auchi Abuja Road, in the serene environment of Iyamho Ozare in Edo State, was established by the Edo State government and was given recognition by the NUC as the 41st state-owned university in Nigeria in 2016. Owned by the Edo State government, the university is dedicated to finding solutions to critical socio-political and economic challenges and to preparing students for leadership in a dynamic world. The desire of Edo State government for quality education is demonstrated in our investment in world-class facilities in the university. This is why the university can boast of modern and advanced technological tools that are not easily available in our country, according to the testimonies of different personalities, dignitaries, and parents who have visited the university recently.
Our goal is to make this university a world-class university, a global university, a university that can compare with anyone outside of this country. So our benchmark is not Nigeria, it's the world. I want that the next rankings, we will see this university being ranked among the best universities on the continent before we go on to the next level.
We found that 70% of the Ivy League universities use Canvas learning management system. Going by global ranking, the 10 best universities in the world, 6 Canvas learning management system. We then decided that if our standards, or if where we want to be, where those universities are, then we should put Canvas learning management system in place for our students. And that's what we have done.
We have taken a guided tour around the campus, and the facilities are impressive and they are world class. Our projections are that in the not too distant future, the university will be a reference point for tertiary education in Nigeria.
We just did a tour of Edo University, Iyamho, and we've seen a lot of beautiful things, awesome things. I'm very, very proud to be an Edo man today. I was just discussing with the VC. Now I know why all our courses here are accredited so quickly. I've been to universities both in Nigeria and abroad. I'm happy to tell you that what I've seen here today is the best I've ever seen. And I'm highly impressed.
Which is globally acknowledged as the fastest growing LMS with more than 80 million users. Hence, Mr. Vice Chancellor, you and your management have blazed the trail by this singular act.
With the increased presence of the university on the World Wide Web, the stage will be set for improved ranking of the university on national and global league tables. You are now well ranked nationally. With the use of LMS, you have additional leverage in global ranking schemes.
New university without doubt, but it's a university with great potential. But beyond the potential, it's a university that has great ideas. It's easy to say that it's a young university, but it is taking on the kind of responsibility that even the older universities are not able to.
We're using simulation technology to train students for achieving the competencies required.
Edo University is well suited, well equipped, both with facilities and human beings to train engineers.
I have to be totally honest. I've been to a few universities in Nigeria. This has got to be the most modern university.
At the size scale of the universities, it's very, very big. The facilities are fantastic and beautiful football pitch.
Welcome to Edo University, Iyamho. History was made on March 23, 2016 in the educational sector of Edo State as the National Universities Commission NUC approved the establishment of Edo University, Iyamho. By this approval, Edo University, Iyamho becomes the 41st state university and 142nd university in Nigeria. Edo University, Iyamho, otherwise known as EUI, was ranked third best in Open Educational Resources 2018, organized by the National Universities Commission NUC. The university is among the few in Africa that has an atomic table and fully deployed Canvas LMS for effective online teaching and learning. During the lockdown, the university deployed the e-learning platform for successful completion of the 2019-2020 academic section. The university has become African Toast with its collaboration with Association of African University for several online training for university lecturers and researchers. Let's take a look. This is the administrative building of the university. This is Muhammadu Buhari Science Building. You are welcome to engineering faculty and its workshops. Here is Farmers Building. These are medical laboratories. This is law faculty. Here is the university library. Here in AUI, we have temperature control classrooms with multimedia facilities. This is the university main auditorium. You are welcome to Students' Hall of Residence. This is our football pitch. I hope you like what you have seen. Thank you for being our visual visitor.
The prospective candidates who arrived the university premises as early as 8 a.m. Thursday morning in company of their parents and guardians were attended to by staff in the various sections of the university, while their credentials were also subjected to scrutiny and necessary verifications. Meanwhile, parents and visitors to the university who were conducted round on a tour of facilities in the university, which include the ultra-modern auditorium, state-of-the-art hostels, among others, appreciated the state government for the giant strides and noted that the institution of learning is comparable to the best in the world.
Everything about the school is impressive. All the hostels, the classrooms, all the facilities are just in order.
The school is very, very beautiful. I saw the facilities, I saw the environment is serene, and I also saw their classrooms. The place is beautiful. And so I'm proud to be one of the parents that brought their child today for the screening.
Initially, when I heard about the school, I had to go through internet. But when I now came, I was like marveled. Yeah, I'm really, really impressed. It's like something you see abroad. Yeah, it's a world-class institution.
Hostels are fantastic. Facilities are wonderful, world-class. I want to believe God that the governor would keep improving on the facilities in this institution for greater impact to the world.
I have some students here already, and the reports I've gotten so far is very impressive. So that's why I brought my daughter.
The candidates who were impressed with the conduct of the screening exercise are eager to be part of the citadel of learning, as well as expressed optimism that they cannot wait to be part of the lucky ones who will be resuming the new academic session of the university, which recently concluded her 2019-2020 academic calendar online via her Canvas learning management system.
The school is a nice place, and I want to be one of the best students around the globe. That's why I came here. I have the hope that I will get the best teaching and learning here as a student.
I like the way the classes are, the lecture rooms and the e-libraries, they are well equipped with computers and everything. The school is good. I like it.
It was a nice experience. I'm glad to be here.
Came here for the screening today, and so far so good. They've maintained social distancing, and the school is actually very nice. And they have a lot of facilities from what I can see. So I'm really, really looking forward to coming here so that I can at least gain the knowledge, and I can't wait.
The chairman of the university's admission board, Dr. Usunobu Usunomena, described the exercise as a huge success.
We had a huge crowd. We followed the COVID-19 protocol dutifully, carefully, diligently in all areas. I also want to say that the post-UTME exercise has been very successful. We are expecting the students back November 16 to resume for 2020-2021 academic session. So we believe all things being equal, despite COVID-19, Edo University is making progress and moving on.
Edo University Iyamho, which has scheduled 16th November 2020 as resumption date for the 2020-2021 new academic session, is amongst the very few universities in the world where academic activities did not shut down due to the coronavirus pandemic. While the screening is still ongoing, the medicine and nursing program screening is slated for Thursday, 19th November 2020.
Out of the 50 students who graduated from the university, 5 students graduated with first class, with Christiana Olayemi Bodude coming out as the overall best student with 4.80 CGPA. 26 students graduated with second class upper division, while 60 students have second class lower division, and 3 with third class. Godwin Evowan and Mohammed Yahaya Aweni came out first as the students with best entrepreneurial idea and shared the 5 million naira prize. The Vice Chancellor, Professor Emmanuel Aluyo, while commending parents for having faith in the institution, announced automatic appointments as graduate assistants for the 5 students with first class, as well as another appointment from Sterling Bank for the same 5 best students.
An academic feat that can only be achieved by another university, here teaching and learning are carried out in state-of-the-art facilities. Here the learning environment is serene and conducive, and here there is a stable academic calendar that is devoid of strife of any kind, as is common in most public universities in Nigeria.
As we march through the wall of responsibilities, we must show ourselves responsible by contributing our quota to the development of Edo State, Nigeria, and indeed the entire world.
Edo State Governor Godwin Obaseki, who also announced 1 million naira each for the best 5 graduate students, commended the management for maintaining the aims and objectives of the institution, while the national chairman of the APC, Adams Oshomole, commended Governor Obaseki for demonstrating practical continuity in the university.
Which is from the two to change the narrative of university education in Nigeria.